Hey everybody, it's Dave with No Chaser, and today's topic is cutting people out of your life so you can stay clean and sober. First time I said snowfur, so we had to redo it, but hopefully this round goes good. Anyways, look at this. I got my arm up. I'm all casual and stuff. But, I'm very surprised. I don't think I've ever done a direct, video on this topic, and this is a huge aspect in a lot of people's lives as far as recovery goes. I think about it, and for me, for the past 10 years, I've had a lot of people in my life that were a part of recovery that I've kept in touch with no matter how things were going. And really the only person I drank and used with was me, myself, and I. Closet drinker type deal. So the idea of, I remember one time I went to treatment and they were like, you need to cut all your friends and you need to cut all those friends out of your life. And I was like, already done it. Really alone. But also, I do remember there was a time where that was an aspect of it. I had friends that I drank with a lot and people that I had used with. And one of those things where you hear about it. Also, let's get the parade of cliches out of the way. Misery loves company. Birds of a feather do drugs together. Playmates and playthings and playgrounds. If you spend enough time in a barbershop, you'll get your hair cut. Or just all the. Let's just really take a look at this, because on the outset, it could be all right, well, you need to, okay, we'll delete all these numbers. All these, I don't want to know these people anyway. These kind of drug dealers or these, swerves or stuff like that. And I mean, even today, now, it's not as simple as just, not having a number. There's all the Snapgrams and Insta chats and book faces or whatever. So, sometimes you have to hit them with the block. So, you got to do the block thing. But, fine, easy. However, what if Johnny the Swerve is your cousin and he's coming to Thanksgiving? Sorry for calling you out, Johnny the Swerve, but you get what I'm saying. Sometimes it goes deeper than this. And another aspect of it is that, some of these people that you were, doing this stuff with, people you went to the bar to, a lot of times, most times, these people aren't, real friends. And by the way, not being judgmental of those people, when you were deep in your addiction, were you truly a super great, accountable, honest buddy? Or maybe you weren't mean or rude or even disingenuous, but you're just kind of in your haze of addiction and stuff. So just think about that, but for other people. And I know a lot of people also, this goes in part with struggling with, well, if I get rid of all those people, the kind of the sad thing was those were the only people in my lives. I have to make new friends, and in a certain way you kind of do. Another cliche, if you want to be a winner, you need to hang with the winner. All these things are true, you just hear them a lot. But in reality, sometimes this is not as simple as it may seem. Like I mentioned earlier with Johnny the Swerve, you may have family members that you see regularly that have, addiction to alcoholism is super generational, familial type of affliction. So you have a lot of that. And maybe not even just the cousin, but your own father, or you're really close, you have one sibling and that person struggles with it and you're around them all the time. Or how about this? You're in an industry, which I know a lot of this happens with a lot of people. You're in some sort of industry that you love to be a part of, but it also comes with a lot of drinking and drug use. How do you navigate that? And on top of this, as for now, I don't have to get rid of the swaths or block all these, druggy or drinking people in my life anymore. However, it doesn't mean that I don't still have to practice cutting people out of my life. Because another thing is, it also goes beyond just drugs and alcohol involved. One thing I've come to understand is that I have to cut out toxic people that only bring negativity. Because getting into relapse or struggling in recovery is not just about being tempted by the substances themselves or just triggers or cravings. Sometimes relapse is your response to stress or depression or anger. And if you have a bunch of people in your life that do this or cause this for you, you probably need to get away from them. But again, a lot of this stuff is much, like many things in recovery, much easier said than done. However, with that being said, even though it's not easy, it really has to be taken into consideration. I mean, I know one thing that was, as much as I hated to hear about it, I knew it was true, was that boundaries. So that's one thing. If there are people that you can't just throw out the door in some respect, or even, you don't even have to kick them out of your life. You just kind of disappear. And a lot of times, some people worry about the judgment they get from others, or you think you're better than me, and And what you have to remember is that basically you being clean and sober it's an affront to their existence in a sense, because whether it's said directly or not, if you lived the same way they did and you came to the understanding that you have to change your life, and you are, that implicitly says, it intimates that, hey, you probably should too. Even if you never say that. I mean, it hints at it in a way. People can get very defensive or insecure about it. And, like I think about this where a lot of times, if they get, if they want help getting clean and sober, then you can kind of be there for them. But you don't need to be all, Bible salesman or door-to-door Jehovah's Witness about it. Just if it happens, it happens. But if not, they have to be let go. But like I said, what happens if there's people in your life that you can't necessarily just let go? They will be there for Christmas, or crap, what if you live with one of them, this is where, again, it's easier for people to sit around and be like, kick them out, do that. If that's your job, then you can't work there anymore, you can't live there anymore. A lot of these things, it can't just be done like that. So this is where you try to enforce boundaries, right? But, boundaries are a lot like ultimatums, where if you go back on it, it's ultimately pointless. Like, the one thing worse than an ultimatum is an ultimatum you go back on. And kind of same things go with boundaries, where if you try to set one up and then you go back on it, then that person, whether they even know it or not, is probably not going to respect it. And, I know what people have struggled with a lot is that, well, this isn't just all Johnny the Swerves. This isn't just all, these bar fly guys that I don't even probably know my name, even though I spent 2 years hanging with them. This isn't just that. Some of these people are my genuine friends. And some people, they drink a lot, they party, and they don't seem to be alcoholic or an addict, and I still want to be around them. I like them. And I know this is what will get a lot of people, is that there's also a sense, for the most part, and I know this is one I fought a lot too, where there's a sense that you don't want to, when you say, you know what, if I'm uncomfortable, I'll remove myself from the situation. If I'm uncomfortable, I'll tell you. But you have to really ask yourself, will you tell them? Will you really? Because it is a huge, gut check to your ego, your pride, or even just your own self-worth of doing that, of actually removing yourself from the situation, or dealing with the awkwardness of they do start drinking. And one thing you got to ask is, are you able to, sort of take that on right now? I mean, so many times, and I've done this to myself too, where, dude, recovery is hard enough. There's no need to test yourself. A lot of people would say stuff like that. Well, I was just going to test myself. I was going to go to this party. I was going to see how I'd react. And it's almost crazy. It's see how you react, because the way you react may start drinking again. That's not a good option to have. And getting back to the people you may not be able to just, shuffle out of your life, it's really this is another thing that comes to play a huge importance in just other aspects in life itself, is that advocation, self-advocating, just really putting out what your needs are. And, a lot of times people are going to be like, well, I need you to do this. I don't, it's not all about you, which in a very strange way, when you start in recovery, in a lot of recovery, it is all about you. It is selfish, but in a more, much more healthy way. And again, we talk about the idea of setting boundaries, and you also have to be able to act upon them in a way where if they get broken over and over again, you gotta, as much as you can, you gotta push them out. But I wish I wouldn't use these terms like shuffle them off or push them out, but they sound kind of aggressive. In a way, you just have to distance yourself. And here's as I kind of alluded to earlier, one that I even still deal with is sort of the toxic and negative people. And I know there was one time I was in a job and I didn't mind the work. It was kind of whatever at the time. But I may try another job lined up. But I quit that job. And I quit that job solely because the work environment was so radioactive. It was awful. And the sad truth is that I was spending most of my time with these people. That's kind of a thing about, if you work full time, most of the time you spend is not with your loved ones or your friends or anything like family. It's with your coworkers a lot of times. So I was like, I can't be like this. I mean, none of them even really drank or used or anything like that, but it was awful to be around. And having that much negativity, I try to think about it this way, especially where I'm at right now. I try to think, you know what? you may not have a high tolerance or a high threshold for sort of stress and negativity. Like, you may think you can take on more, or you may want to be able to, because you don't like to think of yourself as weak. But it's not so much just being weak; it's just vulnerable at a state that I'm at right now, especially early in recovery. It's just you don't need to put too much stuff on your plate, or just to test yourself, or anything like that. And so, when it comes with the people that you surround yourself with, I mean, one thing I know for sure, like, this is one of those broader life things, is that we like to think we are not as influenced by people around us than we think we are. You may think I am super an independent thinker, and I'm a lone wolf, and I'm all this type of stuff where I'm just my own me. And maybe some of you out there are like that, but a lot of times in ways you don't even realize you are influenced by people. Because sometimes bad habits or behaviors they don't just have to be about like doing drugs or drinking. It could be a person that kind of like always takes shortcuts. It could be a friend that kind of always is kind of cheap, or I don't know why you're friends with them, but like screws people over or just acts poorly. And even if you notice that's a bad behavior, just being around a lot of that will start to rub off on you. And acting in that way is kind of like a luxury you can't afford if you're trying to get clean and sober and you're new to this stuff. You just don't want to be like that anyways. So, I would just say, like, yeah, the boundaries is a huge thing if you can't cut them out. But I would almost say, for me, I have some people where I'm just like, I'm not even, this may sound bad, but like, I'm not even going to set boundaries. This person, if I have the opportunity where this person, up to my choice, is not going to be in my life, you know what, at least for now, at least for the first while, I'm not going to deal with this. And then, I don't know, maybe you just get to a point where you're like, I like the things the way they are. Why would I invite this back into my life? So hopefully you don't have people that are too close in your life that you can't possibly, cut out. But in that case, just advocating yourself and practicing boundaries. So anyways, I'm working on it myself, by the way. Link for a podcast that I co-host. It's really great to talk about sometimes addiction, mental health, philosophy. Most recently, we talked about aliens and stuff like that. Link for that. Link for my book, and a way that you can get it free in the description. And the confidential email is also there. Other than that, be well.